Welcome back, folks, to Rapid Fire Leaked, and today we'll cover the Strv-81. So this is going to be a premium tier 8 Swedish medium tank. It's basically a Swedish import of the British Centurion Mk.3 that we already have in the game as the Centurion Mk.1 with the Mk.3 turret. So there is only one dramatic alteration, and that's the increase of the turret armor from 150mm to 250mm. So that's historically super incorrect. It's like the VK4502P all-speed, which has 200mm of sloped frontal hull armor. Historically, it's only 100mm, so wargaming-esque of a tweak, but it never happened. So in reality, this vehicle is basically the same exact Centurion that we already have in the game, but yeah, now it has 250mm of frontal turret armor with about 100 horsepower less for the engine. And that's it. It's a premium, so I basically spoiled the video. Oh well, I already did the preview video for this vehicle, so not that spoiled, I guess. But what exactly is the Strv-81? Well, it's an import of the Centurion Mk.3 and the Mk.5, but the Swedes clump both vehicles together. So you can tell the difference from the Mk.3 and the Mk.5 by the gun barrel. The Mk.3s have the British 20-pounder Type A barrel, whereas the Type B barrel is featured on the Mk.5s. And the main difference between the gun barrel is the fume extractor on the Mk.5 version, or the Type B gun barrel 20-pounder. So here you can see this picture collection. This vehicle right here is the Mk.3 with the Type A 20-pounder. So it doesn't have the fume extractor or the bore evacuator. Whereas these two vehicles right here, that's the Mk.5 with the fume extractor in the middle. Small fun fact, but that's the main difference. Later on, they imported the Strv-101 and 102, which are basically Centurion Mk.10s with the L7, and they modify it into the Strv-104. So that's pretty much all the Swedish Centurions. But the main reason that they bought a lot of these Centurion tanks was because financial reasons. So it was a lot cheaper to just buy vehicles from your allies rather than, make your own vehicle like the Kranvon. Ugh. So we already talked a lot about the history of Swedish tank designs, so we're not going to go into it anymore. But this vehicle is basically an import, and that's it. But they modify it with dramatic increase to the turret armor, so it's historically super incorrect. The Swedes only modified the ERA, the fire control system, the communication devices, etc. and etc. So they never actually touched the standalone model of the armor or the main gun. So they never looked at the blueprints and thought that, hey, we need more armor for the casting of the turret. Never happened. So the 250mm of turret front armor, historically super incorrect. But you probably already saw War Thunder's Strv-81 with the 3 SS-11 ATGM. That's pretty true. So those rockets were of French origin. So actually you can see that on the AMX-13 right here. Strap a lot of it to the oscillating turret. So it does exist. The Swedes also purchased the rockets. They strapped it to the Strv-74 and later on onto the Centurion. So it's actually correct, or historically correct, but the Swedes are not the only ones who use the rockets. So small fun fact, but they did modify their vehicles mostly from the ERA, as well as different placements of the buckets and stowage areas, but that's pretty much it. So, small fun fact, important note. But here is the in-game model of the Strv-81. So, Centurion Mk.3 or Centurion Mk.1 with a Mk.3 turret, and it's green with the mantlet cover, and that's pretty much it. So it does look pretty nice. I mean, I like Centurion tanks, so that's me. I like Shermans, but So you do have a 30 caliber, the M1919 Browning machine gun, so that's for the Commander Cupola, but it's not featured in the Mark 1 version of the vehicle, so fun fact, I guess. But yeah, it's a Centurion tank. It's green, with a few slight adjustments of the spare track links and the spare road wheels, and that's pretty much it. So here are the actual initial stats of the vehicle. So as you can see, it has the same gun stats as the Mark 1, but it has 254mm of frontal turret armor with APCR as the standard shell. So, I mean, the AP shell does come in handy because the normalization, but APCR flies faster, so trade-offs. Also, initial terrain resistance was buffed to the final terrain resistance, but it could be just that it was rounded up to one significant figure. But math, I guess, science, you'll learn about it in science class, so, or like physics, but sig fig is pretty important. So here is the collision model of this vehicle. As you can see, 254 frontal turret armor. It's rounded too, so shoot at the sides, it's 280. Will bounce. Frontal of the mantlet is 235, so it's a very solid piece of armor. You'll not penetrate this thing unless you shoot APCR, high penetration APCR shell, into the middle of the mantlet, and that's the only way to pin. The turret ring is 250, so you can also penetrate here, but usually this vehicle will be hauled down like any other British tanks or American tanks with a lot of gun depression. They will be hauled down, so it will be like 10 degrees at the front, so something like this. And yeah, it's a smaller area, shooting at the top of the turret, no. So pretty strong, but the whole armor is the classic 3 inches or 76.2mm of garbage, like the Centurion Mk.1. So if you get touched by artillery shells, usually at high tiers, the artillery shells have about 100mm of pen for high explosives, and high explosives do not lose penetration over distance. So if you get hit directly like this, it probably will pin and you will not have a good day. But yeah, it's basically a Centurion Mk.1 with dramatic increase to the turret armor. Side of the hull is still pretty much garbage, so 50mm. You do have side skirts, but don't depend on it. Side of the turret is the same, 88.9. Rear is the same, 38. So yeah, the classic 3 inches or 76.2, but now it comes with 254mm of turret armor. So compare this to the Centurion Mk.1 with the Mk.3 turret. It's a lot better on the turret cheeks. So yeah, you'll bounce a lot more shells with this turret than with this turret. But I mean, there is one big trade-off, and that's less engine power. So here are the main stats of the vehicle. So as you can see, I highlighted everything and color-coded based on the average values of tier 8 mediums. So damage per shot, 230 is not that bad. So it's below average, but it's a rapid firing gun, so you'll puncture a lot of holes. Penetration is pretty good, 226. So that's APCR, remember, APCR shell. And yeah, that's actually amazing for tier 8 medium, because the Centurion is known for penetration, as well as the new 100mm L100 88mm on the Panther II, or somewhat lesser degree of a STA2 or STA1, but the Centurion is known for penetration. It's the highest penetration of tier 8 mediums, so that's pretty good. Rate of fire is slightly below average, but gun reload speed is pretty decent, so that will go down to 6.5 seconds or so with a good crew. Turret traverse is below average, 37.55 degrees per second, but you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, 18 elevation, so utilize the gun depression. Aim time is pretty good, 2.21 seconds, and usually you probably will fit a vertical stabilizer, so that's pretty good. And accuracy is also very good, 0.32. Average DPM is slightly above average, 1900 or so. Health is also chunky, 1450. So all of these stats are like the Centurion Mk.1. So the only difference is the turret armor at the front, 254. The hull is still crappy, 76.2. Side of the hull, 50.8. So yeah, but it weighs about 50.8 tons with only 650 horsepower engine, so it got reduced, and therefore the horsepower per ton ratio is only 12.79. That's close to a heavy tank. It's a little bit above average for a heavy, but this is a medium, so the average for a medium is about 15.79, so, or 15.8, so a little bit slower to rev up. Top speed of 50 kilometers per hour now, because the buffs to the Centurion tanks in 9.17.1, reverse of 20 kilometers per hour. It's alright, so you can still wiggle back and forth and hold down, but it's not as fast to rev up based on the horsepower per ton ratio. Hull traverse 37.55, same as the turret, so below average, but it's slightly better at the camo rating than the actual Centurion. I'll give you guys the comparison, but you'll see, it's a little bit more stealthier. View range is just as good, 400 meters, radio range, standard, carry 65 rounds, and terrain resistance is slightly below average for the hard and medium, but above average for the soft, so we'll get somewhat bogged down-ish, but not that much. I mean, based on the horsepower per ton ratio, but it has the turret armor, so the main selling point of this vehicle is the turret armor, and you should play this vehicle like a heavy based on the initial stats. Now, gold cost is only 100, but that's a placeholder value, so it will not cost 100 gold. That's only placeholder. So usually for tier 8 premium medium tanks, it costs about 7,000 gold. For premium tier 8 heavies, it's about 10,000-ish. So that's the basis for the gold cost, but who knows? It may cost like a T34-3, which is about the same price as a T34 or Strv. So insane value or not value. So but here are some comparisons. So as you can see, compared to the normal Centurion Mk.1, it has a few weaknesses or some weakness or some benefits. So it doesn't have the weakness on the mantlet, so it doesn't have the coaxial machine gun weakness to the lesser armor value right here, but it doesn't have the 2-track links on the hull. So as you can see, it only has 1 track link providing extra armor, extra applicant armor, but that's it. So small detail. Also, it has better extension to the space armor covering up the road wheel, but you're not supposed to shoot right here, so meh. Also, funny enough, they modeled the binoculars, periscopes, the bunny ears right here. So yeah, but here you can see the comparison between the Strv-81 with the Centurion Mk.1, as well as the Centurion, the Carnarvon, but most of the stats are the same, other than the turret armor, as well as the horsepower per ton ratio. And yeah, it's pretty much the same. So you do have premium status with the Strv-81, but we'll talk about that. So what are my final thoughts and opinions about this vehicle? Well, it does seem fitting as a Swedish jumbo Pershing, but it's classified as a medium, not a heavy. So it's not like the jumbo Pershing, the T26E5. So you cannot train your Emil crews with this vehicle. So sad to say, it's not for that. It's for mediums, which is the Leo or the Strv-74, or to a lesser degree the M42. Nobody plays that. Ew. So good penetration, accuracy, aim time, view range, and gun depression. Sniping vehicle, but insane frontal turret armor for a medium tank. It's also pretty good for a heavy too. So yeah, pretty insane, but it's slow. Horsepower per ton ratio is that of a heavy. Slightly below average hull and turret traverse, but it's similar to the Centurion Mk.1. So yeah, alpha is a little bit low, but it still have the 76.2 frontal hull armor. So if you get hit, it probably will penetrate. So yeah, a lot of people got turned off from the Centurion Mk.1 just because the hull armor and the size of it. It's larger than average medium tanks at tier 8. So even with good horsepower per ton ratio, you can't really dodge shells, artillery shells, with the Centurion Mk.1. And now it's slower, so you probably will get hit with this vehicle. So that's the turn off point about this vehicle, but it uses APCR as the default ammo, so you have to think about which one do you prefer, shell velocity or normalization, because AP shells have 5 degrees of normalization with less shell penetration drop over distance than APCR shells. But APCR shells are better at leading targets because they fly faster. So that's the trade-off, but yeah. Very strong frontal turret armor, even though the mantlet isn't as thick as the T26E5, but still a lot better than average heavy tanks and medium tanks of the same tier. So turret is very strong, but the hull is not, so trade-off. So it's a better Swedish medium tank crew trainer than the Strv M42-57 alternate number 2 because of the slots for the crew. So for the AMX M42, you don't have the loader spot. It's only 3 crew member, the driver, the gunner, the commander. But most, actually all the medium tanks have a loader, and you're not training the loader. So that's the weakness of the AMX turret on the Strv M42. But it has good view range, camo boosting, or boosted camo, accuracy, aim time, and turret armor, which means you probably should engage at a distance, especially near hills and cover. So utilize to your strengths, minimize the weakness, which is the speed and the hull armor. So having turret armor does not always mean you should rely on it. So if you don't get hit, you won't get pinned, right? If you don't get hit, if you don't get spotted, you don't have to rely on your turret, but you can just rely on your view range and your sniping capabilities to win. So it does save you from close range engagements, but try to stay away, because some of the factors that make this vehicle good is also at range fighting or long distance fighting. So don't always focus on blocking all the shots with the turret. You don't have to, just stay away. So yeah, don't rely on it, but would you trade horsepower per ton ratio for turret armor? And that's the main selling point about this vehicle over the Centurion Mk.1. But it's more forgiving at practicing hull down tactics than the Centurion Mk.1, but it's also easier to get nuked with artillery from frontline engagements. So based on a usefulness scale, it's pretty useful, but it's not that exciting. It's a Centurion Mk.1 with turret armor, and that's it. I mean, the model looks a little bit different, but not that much. It's green, has a matlet cover. That's pretty much it. So, it's useful to make credits and crew XP, but it's not that exciting or special to the eye, I guess. So not like a Chrysler K or a T-28 heavy tank concept, which looks stupid but fun. So this vehicle looks like a clone. So that's my main gripe with it. But from a personal preference and experience of playing hull down vehicles, milking spots or milking hull down spots are usually covered by artillery. So what I'm talking about is like Westfield. A lot of the heavy tanks with gun depression go towards the hills, shooting at other heavy tanks, and basically picking off the vehicles without gun depression, like mostly Russian tanks. So suicidal Russian tanks facing American tanks or British tanks, that's a milking spot. So usually you sit there and just laugh at people going there without gun depression and large lower plates, and you shoot them for all the credits and XP. Then again, artillery also focus on that spot, so basically spoiling your milking tactics. So that's a problem. But also remember, this is a medium, so it will get medium spawn points. Like back to Westfield, you will be spawned on the bottom of the hill where all the heavy tank action that your gun depression and your turret armor will be useful is on top of the hill. So you have to climb all your way up the hill, and when you get there, your teammates are all dead. So it's the same gripe with the Super Pershing. I have all the armor, I should tank all the hits. The vehicle is slow to climb up the hill. When you get there, it's like 0-14. Crap. So be wary of that. Also goes towards the Prokhorovka encounter mode. So all the mediums get spotted or spawned in the middle of the field to the left side of the map. But the flag is across the railroads on the right hand side. So you probably will be spotted crossing the middle of the field from a light tank, and you get punctured. Damn it. So yeah, it's a main gripe with medium tanks that are a little bit slower than the average, but have a little bit more armor. So you have to adjust to your tactics. But this vehicle doesn't seem as interesting. So here is the testing of the Strv 101 or 102 with different chains acting as space armor to prevent penetration from high explosive anti-tank shells or shaped charges. But if you introduce this vehicle, it's a lot more cray-cray, right? So the Swedes were testing different pieces of armor attachments to the Centurion tank to make it more survivable against high penetration shells like high explosive anti-tank and somewhat of other shaped charges like rockets. So they thought about attaching the fence from the Strv 103-esque on the sides as well as at the front. So yeah, it looks a little bit more cray-cray than increased turret armor. So missed opportunity of adding the Super Centurion. That would be crazy. I mean, it would be like the Super Pershing, but still, it's a lot more interesting than having increased turret armor, and that's it. So Road Warrior, adding chains, adding belts, adding like shoulder pads. We go in, we kill, No more talk, we kill. Soon, my dog of war, but we do it my way. Losers wait. Oh, such a quotable movie. Such a nerd. But yeah, Road Warrior Strv 81 with a bunch of chains on it. How awesome would that be? Like, super awesome. No. Just give you a normal copy of a tank we already have with just a little bit more turret armor. Oh, wonderful. So there you go, folks. The Strv 81. So thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll think it. I can't talk anymore. I was thinking about the Road Warrior movie as well as Fury Road. So witness me. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.